Kyenza okwogerako olwaleero nsonga ya kirwadde COVID-19 ne what we call non-communicable diseases, ze ndwadde nga diabetes, cancer, COPD ne bwe bityo. Kakati nga sinaba kutandika njagala kusooka kwebaza abasumba leero abatusabidde wishing happy birthday abalina ennaku ezaabwe ez'amazaalibwa olwaleero n'okukungubagira abafiiriddwa olw'ekirwadde kino. Ne manyiessaavisi ya Luganda naye munzikirize njogere mu Luzungu kansube kyekibayise bubi. N'ekirala ebibuuzo mumanyi abantu balina bingi nnyo, mubiteeke mu chat box. Omukulu Enoch abi breaking mu group za bitano tusobole okubiddamu nga bwe tugenda. What brought about this study is about the fact that for the last 12 years we've been preoccupied by COVID-19 and the problems it's brought on to us. Now, the issues of COVID-19 as we know it and how much energy that has been put into treating it by the governments, we all know. We've been bombarded by information on social media, the conventional media, hair chats, barbershops and everywhere else. Now, I'm not going to go through all the slides I've got because we don't have much time to do that. But the salient points I want to mention today are simple, is that COVID-19 is an issue and it is causing a problem, particularly in the immunosuppressed. Now, the group of the immunosuppressed that we sometimes undermine or do not recognize are the people that have underlying diseases. These are people that have cancers, those that know they do have the cancers, people that have diabetes, those that do not have diabetes and those that don't, people that have had issues with their health from different immunosuppressive illnesses. HIV, for example, is another. People that have had problems with CVAs, strokes, and the rest of it. So at the age group I'm looking at the moment on screen are ages between sort of the late 20s well into the 50s. Now, some of us feel healthy and work out and, carry on with our lives. But in the background, whether we know it or not, might have these illnesses. Now, the issue that I want to highlight today is that a lot of our resources as government and health service have been taken up by COVID. And as the restoration comes up in the next few weeks to months, we're going to have a barrage of people that are not feeling well from all these illnesses. Now, I would request from a personal side to actually go and seek medical help. So if you're 40 and over, please have what I call a full body checkup, for your sugars, for, your blood pressures, for cancer markers. Your general practitioners, for those in the UK, will be able to do that. But there's going to be a queue. There's going to be a whole line of people going for the same from all sorts of areas of the country. Book now, even if they tell you your appointment is 13 weeks. Don't have a fit. Have the test. We don't want to pick you up at a later date. We would rather pick you up early and treat you. I'm making that point, and I'm spending a lot of time on it because people are going to miss the treatment simply because the resources are being used elsewhere. And, some of the people in the same background as I am, Black in this case, tend to sort of say, well, it's niggling, I'm growing old and I'm doing this and that, and then you keep it until it's a later date. And then by the time we actually pick, cancer up or your sugars up, it's beyond manageable, or you're having a heart attack, or you're having a stroke, or your blood pressures are, unmanageable. So let's seek help early. The other big one is mental health. We've been lonely, we've been working hard, finances are low, the economy is low. The UK's economy is down by 25%. I urge you to seek help. And that's the point I wanted to go through statistics and graphs and everything else about COVID versus the non-communicable diseases. But I'll just give you the points to where we are. The good news is that we're getting on with the vaccinations. At the moment, as we speak, as of 2:00 today, we're into 20 million vaccinations for the first dose, which gives us about 31% of the population of the UK. That's a good thing. We're seeing deaths coming down, hospital admissions coming down. In the last 24 hours, we've had about 144 deaths. That's brilliant news, which is down from 1,600 6 weeks ago. But let us not spoil this. If you're called on to have a vaccine, please do go and have a vaccine. In this session, I'm hoping to myth bust, vaccine worries and the rest of it that is there. I'd like to tell you from a personal end, I've had it, and 88% of my NHS colleagues have had the vaccination. Now, our white brothers and sisters, their vaccination rate is running at about 80%. The BAME group vaccination rate is running at about 55%. I would like to call on us, all of us from the BAME group, to actually, attend this vaccination. I'm not going to urge people to go or force people to go, but call on people to respond, because it's a personal choice. But we are on the right path, and please don't spoil this for a lot of us that are working towards this, because we would like to have our lives back. We'd like to, congregate with our families. We'd like to have this service in person. We'd like to have our work back. We'd like to have our businesses running. We'd like to go and visit our brothers and sisters, in Uganda and elsewhere, and travel again. And that's my personal call to yourselves. Now, I don't want to ramble on, and those are sort of the main points. But I would rather, given the time, to move into the myth-busting sort of session, whereby people's questions come through and we answer that. So with that, then I'll sort of look at which numbers you want, what part of science you want, what myths are out there that we need to bust, and, what worries people, what people's concerns are. And my question to you as you send your questions is, what worries you about COVID-19? Where do you see yourself in the COVID-19 picture? View yourself in this case as a patient, as a carer, as a national, as a neighbor, as a Ugandan living in a pandemic. I hope that helps. I mean, I'm trying to shorten all this to sort of give us enough time to have a discussion about this. Mr. Chairman, are you able to, do you have any questions yet? So we can,
Okay, yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, as the doctor has mentioned, he wants the session to be as interactive as possible instead of lecturing in general terms. So at this moment in time, we are open to receiving questions from you. You mention your name and the way you based at, and then you fire the question.
My name is Esther. I'm in Shropshire. Do you have any advice about the vaccine in relation?
Advice about the vaccine. Can we take about would you rather take 5 questions and then answer them at a go, or would you rather answer each question as they come in?
I would rather we take 5 at a go,
yes,
while sort of people think about what's going on, because I'm sure some of the questions will be a repetition of the others or an angle of the same thing. So I'd rather we look at 5. But I'll start with Esther's question. Now, the vaccine, simple and clear, it is safe. How safe is it? It is so safe that we've vaccinated 80% of our medical staff, which only means that if it was horrible, in the next few months, you won't have a health service run. You won't have nurses, you won't have doctors, you won't have, HCAs, you won't have your hospital leaders. That's how safe it is. And the vaccines we've got 3 vaccines in the UK. We've got Oxford, AstraZeneca, Pfizer, and Moderna. At the moment, we are using Oxford in the community and Pfizer in the hospitals. The difference is only that Pfizer, we need it to be, minus 70, 80 degrees for it to be viable. And we can't sort of send it out in the hospital, but some GP areas do have those facilities, so they do have Pfizer, and vice versa for Oxford. The next few questions, please.
Okay, I've got a question here in the chat room from Livia Bateze. She's asking, can pregnant women get a vaccine? And then the second question, would you rather go for that or?
Okay, carry on.
Okay, the second one is, Dr. Elijah, thanks for the lecture. My question, what do you say about the symptomatic and asymptomatic clients? And that is in relation to vaccines. It has another part. Would you advise them to take vaccines too, especially with the age groups? So another question, yes, from AC. The third question from AC, she's asking, Dr. Elijah, do you have any advice about the vaccine and breastfeeding mothers? Same question, I think. Yeah. No, different question.
Yes, thank you very much. Let me take on those two. To start with the pregnant and the breastfeeding mothers. Ethically, we cannot do studies on people that are pregnant or children. But as the studies go on, and as for the sort of the last 3 months vaccine have been going on, inadvertently, we've given vaccines to people who are pregnant and people who are pregnant, breastfeeding. And we've not come up with any problems so far, and none have been reported. So much as in the last couple of weeks, the Royal College of Obs and Gynae has actually put out a document saying we're safe to give vaccine to pregnant mothers or those planning to be pregnant. Now, the risk for having COVID when you're pregnant is higher. So if you can be protected, you will be protected. And so we don't have any safety problems with pregnant mothers so far. And then question 2 was about the symptomatic and asymptomatic. So if you've had COVID, you're urged to still take the vaccine. It will act as a booster. For starters, we don't know how long the natural response holds on to. So some reports have said 3 months, some reports have said 6 months, some are saying it's longer, but we're not sure of that. Whereas we know the vaccine is much longer than that. So once you get vaccinated, it's not going to cause any harm, but it'll give you a boost in your immunity. So if you're invited to have the vaccine, if you're at that age group, we're now up to the 60s, heading on to the 50s. Please do, or immunocompromised, please do the vaccine. I hope I've covered your questions.
Thank you very much, Dr. Elijah. We've got 2 other questions, I think 3. One from Frederick Senyange. Can you take the vaccine if you have hay fever? And then another question from Anne Kasibante. She says someone had a vaccine, got ill after 2 days and went for COVID test and was positive. She got admitted and after 3 weeks, she passed on. What advice would you give on this? Or what would be your comment about this?
So I'll start with the hay fever one. Now, hay fever, let's not confuse it. So there is the allergic reaction to allergens, in flowers and pollen and the rest of it. So there wouldn't be a problem having a vaccine when you have hay fever. But if you have a temperature, for whatever reason, it's worthwhile holding off for the vaccine until your temperature has come down, whatever is causing it has been identified. So if you have a temperature, I wouldn't advise you to have the vaccine. Now, the issue about somebody having COVID vaccine and then becoming ill, becoming positive, and then passing on, is the vaccine kicks in 2 weeks later. The disease itself, you can't catch it, and you have an asymptomatic period. For some people, they are symptomatic altogether, but then you do have a period when you won't show symptoms at all, but the disease actually, you've got the virus and it's picking up and it's growing and it's attached itself to your cells and reproducing. This is usually 48 hours to 3 days before symptoms appear. But if at that point you have a vaccine and then the disease overwhelms you, I'm afraid that will be a situation you have, that sort of situation whereby then somebody becomes sick and then is overwhelmed by the disease. That will be my number one explanation for that sort of situation. We haven't had times when you have developed disease from the vaccine because the vaccine does not have a virus in it at all. So it wouldn't cause disease, but it has identifiers from the receptors from the virus that the body recognizes as disease, so that when you actually get the real COVID disease, it will let off the cells that then will help you fight the disease. Does that make sense?
I hope it does. I think it does, definitely. Thank you very much, Dr. Elijah. We got a few more questions in the chat room from Sandra Nakazi. Yeah, she's wondering that would you urge clients to go for checkups first before taking the jab? And then if you can go for that, there is another question as well.
So the only understanding for not having the vaccine is if you're allergic to the elements of the vaccine. So if you have an invitation to have the vaccine and then you turn up at the hospital and say they have the Pfizer, and then the nurse will go through the elements that are in the vaccine and say, you're allergic to this, or you're allergic to protein, you're allergic to A, B, C, D. And if your answer is no, there wouldn't be a problem to why you shouldn't have the vaccine. On the other hand, if you have a fever and you're unwell, postpone your vaccine. But you don't require any special checks before you have the vaccine. But as I made the point when I first started my remarks at the start, that all of us are going to have to require to have the annual checks so that we can pick up the non-identified diseases in the next few weeks.
Thank you very much, Dr. Elijah. Okay, somebody's asking, can you scroll down a bit? Yeah, this message here. Who's the person asking? Yeah, Marion is asking, if you get no reaction at all following the vaccine, is it a likelihood that you haven't formed antibodies and therefore the vaccine was ineffective?
No, so it wouldn't be the case. So we've got, the schedule is for 2 vaccines. And so up to about 75% for the first dose, and then into the late 90s, 99 dose. So at one point, you're going to be protected. So if you are symptomatic, you don't, you know, it's not that you're supposed to have symptoms when you have the vaccine. Usually, first and foremost, because it's a needle, you're going to have a bit of a neck at the, you know, at injection site. That is expected. But some of us have had, say, my wife had a headache. You know, that was all the response they had. All I had was a bump on the arm. It doesn't mean they don't have a reaction. I didn't have a vaccine or a reaction to it. You will have a response. Your body will respond to the vaccine in some sort of manner. The percentage of people that are not responding, hence the second vaccine, will always pick people up. So not everybody will have a response. Not everybody will have a reaction. Some will have about 48 hours of aches and fevers. Others might even have swelling in their armpits because of the reaction. We all react differently. But if you don't have a reaction, don't worry. Go on and have your second scheduled vaccine. You should be protected. And the more of us that get protected, then we'll have the herd immunity. So those that might not be picked up, or those that are allergic to it, will then ultimately be protected. Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor. Sylvia Bateze is asking, you talked about MOT check. So she's wondering, when I go to the GP, what can I tell the GP in order to get the MOT checkup you're talking about?
So the checkup is for, you know, is about the background of it all is that many of the services have been held off because we had to respond to the COVID-19. So once you go to your GP, as it's an annual check, you say, you know, I'm over 40 years old. Can I have, you know, a checkup? And then the question will be, have you had any problems? Have you had, you know, headaches or temperatures or, you know, all different questions they'll ask you depending on, you know, your situation. And then they'll do some blood tests. It doesn't mean it's going to pick anything up, but we just don't want to miss people that have had problems. Or if you're already feeling a bit woozy or not well, or you're not up to standard, have that check. Don't hold off. Because I'll say, for example, Ugandan, you're very, very considerate people. You're saying, well, the health system is overwhelmed. I'll hold off. But I'm having this change in my balls, you know, loose and then constipated and loose and all the other, you know, now and again. Call your GP up, have a simple checkup, and let's not pick up alert cancer or anything. So that's the background of it all. You know, we you know,
coordinator, can I?
Yeah, sure.
Can I ask a question? Because I'm driving, I can't type. Please kindly, please forgive me for that. But I know you did answer that question. However, we according to studies that have been done, we've just been told that us, the Black community and the Asian community, really have a bad. When we get this thing, the COVID thing, it really treats us, but it actually does not treat us very well. Is there a specific reason as to why? Is there anything we can do to boost our immunities? Because that's quite crucial. There's many of us Black ethnic minority, yeah, and Asian, and the studies show that we are greatly affected by this COVID thing. Is there anything we are missing in our diet? Is there anything we are not doing? Can you throw some pointers on that? Because I think it would help a great deal, especially with people that are living with underlying issues, because there are many of them, though we don't come out and put our data in public. Thank you.
So there's information and studies are ongoing why the BEM community is a lot more affected by COVID. Theories are that our epithelial has about larger ACE receptors for the COVID-19. That's being studied. The others is that we are at higher risk of having underlying issues, diabetes, hypertension, and the rest of it, which are risk factors for COVID-19. Hence, the chat we're having today, that this we need to manage. Thirdly is our melanin. If you have a lower levels of vitamin D and have melanin in an area where the sun is lower, your pickup for vitamin D is lower. So if you can have vitamin D, and at the start of the pandemic, these were being given, and now they're available over the counter, how increase your vitamin D. The sun is now coming out. Have some walks, try and get some vitamin D into yourselves. Now, more information will come up and why it is the way it is. But this only encourages us that if you have an underlying disease, say diabetes, control your sugars, be mindful of what your diet is. We have a tendency, culture, of saying, a higher life is chimere and the rest of it. And then, you eat yourself silly. Let's have a balanced diet. Let's watch our weight. Let's take care of ourselves. These are sort of issues that we have to look after. A common word that I've actually given to the rest of the Ugandan groups I've spoken to is, it's been politicized, but Okwere is look after yourself. Because if you have recorded to have a slightly higher sugar or you're pre-diabetic, in many of the late 40s, early 50s, you're in that group, your sugars are on borderline. Then say, I'm still managing. Bring it down. If your BMI is well over 25, bring it down. If you're going to work, it doesn't make you a boss to park next to the door. Park a mile away and walk the rest of the way. Give you some exercise. Manage your meals. It's those little things that are cumulatively protecting ourselves. It's this whole culture of, nafuna sente, katindi mugaga, and then you eat yourself silly. I think it doesn't work anymore. Reduce processed food. We do have some of us on this call that have, Ugandan food stalls. And, I'm encouraged the fact that they actually sell natural, good, organic food. Let's, one, support those shops, those areas, and get good, nice food from those areas. And it's, let the sausage eaters and the rest of it's not working for us. So it's those little cumulative bits that we need to talk to. If you need to speak to a dietitian, please do. If you need to speak to your GP about what you do for your health, do that. Pressures, high blood pressure, have the rest, reduce the stress, interact, And the other thing is that, everybody on the call is an adult, at least most of us are. But this information should trickle down to our youngsters. If I turn up with a BMI of 24 and I'm healthy and I'm working out and I'm cycling and so on and so forth, but my son is twice the kilos of weight he's supposed to be, it's not going to help him at all. Educate him about that, control him about what he eats, and keep away from the junk food. Thank you. Hope that helps.
Thank you very much, Dr. Elijah. We've got another question from Frederick Senyange. Can I have a Pfizer vaccine as the first dose and then AstraZeneca as the second dose?
So at the moment, the advice is that keep to one and not the other. So that is something that we're looking into and considering. But we've got enough vaccines to cover everybody. And once you've had the Pfizer, your next appointment will be with Pfizer. So try not to mix them until we have enough information to work through this. Lately, I think last week, Johnson & Johnson have a good record for just having the one, but that is all in America. At the moment in the UK, just if you've had Pfizer, keep to Pfizer for now. If you had Oxford as AstraZeneca, keep to Oxford as AstraZeneca for now.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Elijah. Mrs. Damali Sentongo, how do you know which vaccination is suitable for an individual?
They're all suitable. They're all suitable. One example, I'm trying to make this as interactive as possible and as personal as possible. Say, for example, I've had Pfizer. My wife has had Oxford AstraZeneca. My mother's had Pfizer. My sisters have had, Astra. It's a whole mix. So it's not specific for whoever it is. It's what is available. But what we know is they're safe for everybody. And it's not a personal choice or this or the other, because some people are going to have them to, closest to where they are, the vaccination centers. Others are placed in hospitals because they work there and they're having different vaccines for that, for those particular areas. So it's all the vaccines are suitable for everybody, and they've been tested on a wide range of people. I mean, numbers we're talking about phase 1 and phase 2. We're talking about 40,000 people tested for safety and on all the vaccines we're using out through the world.
Elijah, we have a question from Sarah next. She says, I was tested positive for TB in 2019, though the X-ray was clear. Should I still have the vaccine as I was treated? I hope
yes, you are treated. You are treated, and that's almost 2 years ago. You are treated. 2, you've had TB exposure, and you tend to develop, immunity to TB itself. So having COVID vaccine is not going to trouble you at all. It actually, protects you a bit more. But the two are different. TB is a bacteria. COVID is a virus. But you should go on and take your vaccine. The other comment, that's the TB diagnosis is a bit personal to yourself, but developing TB is 1, exposure, 2, the tendencies to be immunosuppressed. Whatever caused you to have TB in the first place, please do manage that. I'm not going to ask questions, and I'm not going to go into the details of all that, but the initial problem that brought you the TB, that has ought to be treated and managed, because that generally is going to affect how you respond to different illnesses altogether.
Thank you very much. Umzana Mawanda Juko, for those who are allergic to some elements in the vaccine, is there a provision for the vaccine without the elements they're allergic to?
I'm afraid to say not at the moment. So the hope is that if we get, say, 60-80% of all of us vaccinated, then the rest of the population will be protected. But I would like to note that the people that are allergic to the elements of a vaccine are minuscule, as in they're very, 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 very few. And I mean genuine allergies are very, very, very few. But we are working on how best to manage those. But the hope is that the more we vaccinate, which is the talks we're having, the communications we're having, the NHS leaders coming on, like Prof. Van Dam and the rest of them, is to actually encourage everybody to be vaccinated. At the moment, we're doing very well. I mean, within weeks, having 20 million people vaccinated is brilliant.
Mami Chiaga, you jumped my question to go to Mulangilas. You jumped my question.
Okay. Is it Sarah? Yeah?
Margaret.
Margaret. Okay, Margaret. Is it the one way? Can you ask it anyway, direct? Because
Margaret.
Yes,
Margaret.
Just ask directly.
Yeah. Dr. Elijah, I was asking that if you get the vaccine, after 3 weeks, what are the chances of being very ill or even death?
Chances are low. So the safety studies that we've had have been very, 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 very positive. We haven't had reaction. I mean, even when we had the occasion of a patient having an anaphylactic reaction, they were treated, and that was because they were allergic to the elements in the vaccine that make up the vaccine, not necessarily the bits of the virus that we're using to generate the vaccine. So chances are pretty much low. And if at all, because everybody that has a vaccine is also told, go on ahead and report any issues that you have with the vaccine. All that information is coming back to the centers and it's collated nationally. And if there are any real issues, people are then gotten over and then tested. Because then, I mean, there have been people that have said, well, this happened to me or the other happened to me. And, they've had a phone call from Collindale and said, well, this is public health and wanted to, speak to you about this and the other. History is taken and tests are done to actually ascertain what really happened. And as it turns out, we haven't had any issues. And that's the honest truth.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Doctor. I will combine the next two questions. One from Sandra Nakazi. Would you mind clarifying any differences among all the vaccine varieties? That's from Sandra Nakazi. And the second one, I work for NHS. It's from Lillian or Lily. I work from NHS and I have had Pfizer vaccine. Some of my colleagues have experienced very heavy periods with clots after having the vaccine. What is the doctor's opinion about this, especially to ladies of childbearing age?
Okay, so let me start with the ladies and childbearing ages. So in my experience, the numbers that we've had that have fallen back in receiving the vaccine are people who have, childbearing age because they think, they're going to be affected by the vaccine or it's got DNA altering mechanisms or it's going to affect their children or their productivity. Our numbers have been low, but that is not born in all the studies that we've done. It's not born in the experiences that we've had so far. It's not turned up anywhere else. So I'll be honest with you, I can't explain the heavy periods, but if that is true, please tell your colleagues that think they change in their periods to actually contact the vaccine center, and then we can look into that. My personal experience in my area, we haven't had that as a problem. What we've had has been people worried about what the vaccine might do to their productivity and as we go on, because some of the young ones, the young nurses, have been wondering what would happen if they became pregnant after having the vaccine, and we haven't had any problems. And we've had as soon you will find we're going to have COVID babies. We haven't had any problems so far.
Thank you very much, Doctor.
So Sandra's question was about the varieties.
Yes.
Now, Sandra, how much time do you have? We can talk about the science of the varieties, who forms what makes anywhere. But I mean, so being in the UK, we've got the Pfizer vaccine and the Oxford and the Moderna. So the difference between them is the one uses the messenger RNA part of so the messenger RNA will be RNA. So when the RNA from a virus is produced, attaches to your body on the receptors, it gets into your cells, it uses your proteins to form messenger RNA, which then uses your proteins to form a virus, and then they accumulate, reproduce, break out into your cells and affect the other cells. That's the summary of it all. So the vaccine is using a part of that messenger RNA to create an impression of a virus being in the system, that is your body, which then the body responds to as if you had the virus, and then it stores that information in its cells, in its memory cells, so that when you next encounter the virus, if ever, it then reacts and fights pretty fast for you, and then you're protected. So the other virus uses a protein and a segment of the receptor of the virus itself, which then gives the impression of the virus being in the body, and then the same mechanism is set off, in the cells, in your protector cells, in your soldiers, as you may call them. And then this is memorized, because then it says, they're not there, they're false alarm, but you have already trained your body to respond. So the next time you encounter this virus in the community or handshake or somebody's house at a party, it will know what to do. Does that help? But if it's about differentiating all the virus, the vaccines, I mean, we've got multiples. It could be a whole day here talking about the different vaccines from, 3 from China, 1 from Russia, the 3 we're using here, and so on and so forth. It's a big one. But if you want, send me an email and I'll send you this information about the different one. And if you're really, really interested, sciencey and geeky, this information is available on the PHE website and on the FDA website as well.
Thank you very much, Dr. I think Sarah rephrased her question for your quick response. She tested positive for TB, though the X-ray was clear. That was 2019. And then she got treatment for it. So she's wondering, should I still take the vaccine, as I don't know how my body will react?
No, please do take the vaccine. The two entities, TB and the vaccine, are wholly different. But what you need to be tested to be protected against now is COVID-19. And having had TB, that you're already protected for that, and you've had treatment for that.
And then supplementary question, do vaccine varieties have a connection to age groups? Like in Sweden, people above 65 years are recommended to only take the Pfizer, regarded more effective. How does it work? Okay, she asked, how is it, but how does it work?
So with the studies and the responses, percentages are going to be different. And, because you say Oxford, AstraZeneca, you have, the early 70s for the first dose, and then into the 90s the second dose. And then Pfizer is giving us 90, and then higher 90s with the second dose. So in Europe, Germany and France have gone with Pfizer, besides they make it. But in the UK, we've tested and we've used Oxford AstraZeneca widely, that we're certain that it protects all age groups. And this we say time and again. Say, for example, we've vaccinated 20 million people. That gives us a lot more information. That in itself is a study. And we've started with the medical personnel, and we know what the responses are. And this has all gone up straight from the Queen and Prince Philip all the way down to the whole population. So we know it actually protects you. We know that you actually have antibodies for it. So that information is being generated, and it's further backing up the fact that it doesn't matter which one you take, you will be protected. The information that the Germans and the French are using is the initial Pfizer vaccine, and the way behind us. So sooner or later, that will all change. It's available to them. That's what they bought. Everybody's bought multiples of vaccines, if one works or the other. But we've got what we've got, the two we've got are working very well for us.
Okay, thank you very much, Doctor. Omulangira Mawanda Juko would like to know whether you've had cases of patients that have had the vaccine and caught the virus about a month later. How did they get it, or how did they react?
So at the moment, that is my newest piece of work is picking up anybody who thinks they've had a vaccine and they think they've had the vaccine and now they've caught the virus, because it just means that we are going to be testing what sort of response they had, or if that certainly was the case. And if they have been tested positive, because when you test positive, sometimes it's not viable viruses that you're picking up. Let me make a point. If, for example, I had the vaccine and encountered the virus and then tested myself, I might have elements of the virus lying in my nostrils, but not causing disease because they're dead pieces of virus. So the PCR tests the material, the RNA material for the virus. It doesn't test whether it's alive or not. And we haven't actually cultured live viruses for that matter. So at the moment, we don't have that information. In my personal experience, we haven't picked it up, but we are collecting any of that information, or anybody that seems to have had the virus and then probably got it again, or had the vaccine and probably had the virus, is we're picking that information up and sending it to Collindale, and they're running these tests. And in the next few weeks to months, we'll have the studies for that. So that is an ongoing project, and that's all going on through the hospitals.
Sorry, doctor. I think my question was divided into bits because but my question was, have you had cases of patients that have had the vaccine and probably caught the virus maybe a month later? And the question was, if you did, how did you see signs of effectiveness? I mean, for somebody that has caught the virus after being vaccinated.
The short answer to both your question is we haven't seen any cases, but we're looking into it, because this is an ongoing study. It doesn't mean that once you've had the vaccine and it's taken off, that's the end of the story. So all these scenarios are being looked into. All these scenarios are being, trying to pick up any of these, and we'll have answers for them as we go along. At the moment, we haven't.
Okay, tweyanza nnyo ssebo Doctor. Kirabika ebibuuzo biweddeyo eno mu chat room. Okuggyako nga tulina ebibuuzo ebirala naye ssebo ndowooza oyinza okutandika okuteekateeka concluding remarks. Unless if you have another question, please raise your hand or unmute. Oh, there's one that has just come in from, Galaxy S8. You mentioned some elements that one could, no, this one has been asked already. No, this one has been asked already. This one has been answered already. You mentioned some elements that one could be allergic to. Can you please let us know what kind of elements we should look into? Have you? Okay. Did you get that, Doctor?
I did, yes. So the different elements are going to be, it's certain proteins or certain chemicals. Now, when you turn up at the center, it's going to be the vaccine that is at the center, and those will be read out to you. It's people that have had allergic reactions, and I mean anaphylactic reactions to different things, things mainly around eggs or protein or different medication that, those are sort of things that we'll be looking out for. So an allergic reaction is where you had swelling of your throat or your lips and eyes, or you've had to have an adrenaline shot to get you back, or that sort of thing. Those are sort of reactions we'll be looking at. And once you turn up at the center, that question will be put forward to you, and the elements will be read from that particular, vaccine that you'll be looking at the time. Because they're all different ones for different, it's difficult to generalize or give you, this and the other, or, that sort of thing. But do ask the question, or if you ask the question, have an idea, particularly if you had a reaction, an anaphylactic reaction, which is very, 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 very few of us are in that category.
Let's take this last set of questions, and then you can answer them with concluding remarks, and we can call it a session. There are about three. One from Connie. Doctor, how about the view that the vaccine is in the long term will alter our DNA? And number two, what are the chances of babies with defects? And then the second question is, if you take note of that,
yeah,
I had a vaccine and I felt thirsty after having it. Why was this so? And then the third question is, will the vaccine affect our changes of giving birth? Somewhat related to the previous question. Harriet is asking, are the vaccines safe for G6PD deficient people? I think that is the last set of questions. And then
okay. Well, thank you very much. I'll take the question about DNA and babies and alteration and the future of it. The vaccines are not made of genetic altering material. They do not affect your DNA. So they're not going to affect your babies, and they're not going to affect your DNA. So you're not going to turn up, some sort of animal in a few years' time. They don't do that. They haven't done that. And that's why we've actually said, because those questions came up, when the studies started, is we said, well, let's start with the vulnerable, which is, the people most affected, and the health practitioners. If that were true, I'll be honest with you, we wouldn't be here, or you won't have a health system. And that's the truth of it all. So they are safe. Now, somebody asked about feeling thirsty when they had the vaccine. I haven't come across thirst as one of the side effects of it all, but having vaccine and turning up and, all sorts of things of every day, we all become thirsty at some point. Could that be the explanation for that? But the good, simple answer is have a drink. You should be fine. And Harriet, is it safe? And the G6PD deficiencies, it's that is your liver function deals with that. You should be fine. The vaccine is going to go to your protective system, your spleen, and you should be fine with having the vaccine. As a matter of fact, because you're going to fall in the immunosuppressive sort of age group at some point, you'd rather have the vaccine than not.
Okay,
Doctor, just a quick one, Doctor.
Yes.
Can I just quickly say something very brief? Because one of the things I found out within my community is that people did not know that they were diabetic until they had COVID, and then they found out that they had underlying strains of being diabetic. Or I think what also happened, I think, was the medication that was being used here in the UK to try and help people manage or get out of this COVID situation, that it kind of boosted their levels of sugar levels in their bloodstream. So the lady who took the vaccination, I think, goes back to the point that you made, that we all need to do MOTs, because it's quite crucial. You could be on the borderline, and I'm not saying you are, but it could be. It could be something that is underlying and you don't know. But it's worth checking, I think, and having an MOT and seeing, because I think being a little bit, being over thirsty could be a sign of, it could be, and I'm using the words could be. It could be anything, but it's worth checking.
It is. May I note that features of diabetes as being thirst, passing a lot of urine, losing weight, drinking a lot, that sort of thing. Those could point towards a pre-diabetic person. But as the precurrent speaker mentioned, it's worthwhile all of us having that, yearly, 2-yearly check, particularly if you're over 40. And with those that we treated with COVID, we had to use immunomodulators like steroids. Steroids knock off your sugar management straight away. So many people actually went in with COVID and came out with diabetes, which is very unfortunate. But then you then start managing that. But it was because, say, for example, I've had patients in their 40s and coming up with diabetes. It's only because they were borderline and they were thrown over. Hence the whole idea of this talk, like the current speaker mentioned, is we need to have these checks and be certain that we pick up the little subtleties in our health that we need to manage. And I'd like to say we've had outbreaks. Some have actually, and pandemics, some have actually directly affected us, some haven't, and through the years. And this is not going to be the last one, unfortunately. So let us be prepared on a personal level for the next big one. We don't know when or where or how it will happen, but this is not going to be the last one. In the last, sort of 20 years, we had SARS, we've had MERS, we've had Ebola. If you go further than that, we've had HIV, all these things are happening. So we've got to take our health as a personal responsibility. And, and the promise is tomorrow will be a good day. So let's get the vaccine. It is safe. And let us not spoil this for ourselves. We need a decent spring and summer to come. Thank you very much.
Doctor, maybe this is the very, very final question before I read the comments out to you.
Yeah.
How long is normally vaccine taken to develop in the laboratory? But before you come to that, just some comments. Appreciating the presentation. Thank you, Dr. Elijah, for the information given. It has been insightful. That's from Maureen. And then, scroll up. I also wish to thank the doctor for answering all the questions. Stay blessed. Just want to share that experience. Okay, and Anne wants to just put up a comment to everyone.
Doctor and Mr. Coordinator, sir, I also had just a comment again, because I've had my vaccine and I had the Oxford one, but my symptoms went on for over a week. No, they were mild, but I could still feel them. So I just want to, but I'm now fine and I'm up and running. I was up and running by the following day, but the symptoms were there. So just, I think, to make people comfortable, because sometimes some bodies react differently. They could react longer than, my mom took it and she was okay one day and she was up and running. I took mine and it's about 3-4 days where I had different reactions. I had a bit of a temperature and I had a constant headache and feeling, loss of energy, muscle pains and aches. But that was expected because I was told anyway, and the leaflet they gave me. But they said, these are mild and they will go away within, just a few days. But mine went over for a week and I started getting worried. But when I went back and read the leaflet, it said it could go over a week. And I think that is what brought comfort to me. So for those of us that maybe have not taken it, or maybe will take it and feel that way, I just want to say that it could be that maybe your body is different. For some people, they don't have, like the doctor said, you didn't have anything, your wife had headaches, and, but other people, it could be slightly, longer, more than 2-3 days of, that kind of side effects, headaches, aches and pains and things thereabout, just to make people more comfortable. So let me hope that helps.
Thank you very much. I will just read this final comment and then the doctor will, wind up. It's just Anne Case sharing with us. Mine is to request the anti-vacciners to reconsider. I had my COVID-19 I had COVID-19 in April, and I know how it feels to fight for breath. I had my first dose yesterday at 8:45 a.m., then developed chills late last night and general weakness during the day. And as we speak now, I'm feeling very fine. Please do reconsider. Let's do ourselves a favor to fanyo. So that is Anke. Thank you so very much, Anke. Over to you, Doctor, to wind up.
Well, thank you very much. I must have been encouraged by the response here. I mean, people want to know, and that helps, because some of us and some of our communities ignorance is a bit of a problem, or the misinformation on the web is overwhelming. But if we can have these discussions, or if questions come up later on, please pass them through to Enoch or the team, and then we can see how we can deal with this. And those that needs a bit more, deeper information about this, I'm able to supply it, or even, it's readily available on the FDA website, because it's not a secret. It's all out there on PHE. It's all out there. Look for this information, but take your health as your own responsibility. Look after yourselves. Have yourselves tested. I mean, today we spoke about the non-communicables, but we still have things like HIV. Those of us that remember what sort of devastation it is still causing, in our communities, and speak to our children about it. There's so many other things, but our health is what we can actually protect. Those of us that are in economies that can actually finance looking after us, if you're unwell, seek that medical help early and look after yourself. But don't wait, because my interest is in prevention. Don't wait until you're ill for you to look for this sort of treatment, because it might then be too late. So go in early, have yourself tested. If you're well, brilliant, and carry on looking after yourselves. See, what do you eat, what do you drink, what do you do? And I must say, and again, finally, the vaccine is safe, and it only helps us, not spread it to our next person or the other, and it keeps our communities. We really, really do need our lives back. So don't spoil this for us. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Obudde butweddeko tusigaza eddakiika nga 2. Margaret, olina ky'ogamba ekitalinda?
Neyanziza mwami Kiyaga. This is Mobile Fred.
Mukulu Mubiru, yes.
Okay. I've asked my question, and you read it to the doctor, but he didn't reply. I think the main worry where we come from as Black people is the way this vaccine was developed so fast in the lab. That's why I asked, how long does it take a vaccine to develop in the lab? And another question I asked is that if I'm due to fly abroad or anything, and I've taken my vaccination, when I test it, am I going to test positive, or should I wait for some days to the vaccine to settle down and then I test for the travel certificate? Thank you very much.
Yes, sorry, my apologies. The vaccine, I'll start with that one. I think it's the quickest one. Vaccines take from, say, 2 years to, decades to develop. The difference about this particular one and the devastation it was causing is that we already had an experience for the SARS and the MERS before in the early 90s and early 2000s. So there was already information about it, what the virus is about, primers on what it looked like. So the basic sciences about this virus was already available. The bits that we needed to do were the phases 1, 2, and the safety and how much protection they develop. And then picking that up also takes some time. It takes a couple of years, the studies to go through to get volunteers and the rest of it. And then the next phase is about, authorizing it and having the production, the pharmaceutical companies to produce it, because then you have to have the finances to massively produce this vaccine, because honestly, it costs money to do. So what happened in this case is you already have the science, and then you have the phases 1 and 2 going on, and 3 taking place concurrently. So once 1 and 2 go and we're sure it's safe and it produces the reaction we want, then you get larger studies to go on concurrently. Why you promise the pharmaceutical companies that we will fund the production. And that's what the governments did. And that's why they put in a lot of money to book so many, say the UK government asked for, say, well, Moderna, you're doing your work, we want so many, and they paid for it. AstraZeneca, you're doing so many, and they paid for it. Johnson, the American governments and the rest of, so everything was going concurrently. And as soon as it was go with the authorization and we're sure it was doing what it wanted it to do, production was already in process, and not just here, in Europe, in India, and so on. And that's why we've got the vaccines we've got. As a matter of fact, in some areas, we don't have enough. But now that they're all actually producing the response we want, we're going to have an excess, which is now the discussion is, how then do we help the economically challenged countries? In this case, Uganda. And as of the end of last week, Friday, I think, Ghana has already got a few vaccines going for. They received some vaccines. So they are going to start their vaccination program, as a donation from a wealthy country. And so those discussions are ongoing. So the speed at which the vaccine developed was because a lot of effort was put into it. The same way Ebola happened, the treatment to it, it's happening, it's devastating, work has to go. If you have something going, we will find you, do something about this, and so on and so forth. So that is ongoing.
Excuse me, doctor. On that question, I want to ask that, did you ever forecast the mutation formations? Thank you.
Yes, so we haven't mentioned variants. So variants as a virus, that's their nature. They always mutate. So they're always going and they're being tested against the vaccines and against these variants. And once you throw it out in the community, say, for example, as we've got 20 million people, and we are all out of these 20 million, we're going to have people that are going to encounter these variants. For example, I work in a hospital every day. I see COVID people every day. One of my patients might have a variant and I've had a vaccine. If I develop COVID, I'm going to have my tested for COVID and my vaccine. And it only means that the vaccine I had, if I develop COVID, will have failed in that nature. And then once you get the population against how many failures we've got, then that's when we'll have a problem. At the moment, despite the fact that we've had, the Kent, variant running around, we've had the South African variant running around, and this weekend we've had the Brazilian variant has been spotted somewhere else. So we have them in the community. We have people that have been vaccinated that are encountering them. So as the information comes in, we'll know. But we did know that viruses do change. That's why we have the yearly flu vaccine, because that one's very notorious for, changing its nature and producing a different, pathogenicity in all of us. But as for now, for the last 12 years, we haven't had a problem with the COVID vaccine. I mean, the COVID virus as it is. So we've had the variants coming in, but we don't have any problems yet. But that doesn't mean that in a few months' time, that might still be the case. But the more people we vaccinate, the more infectivity we deal with, so we don't have these variants rampant in the community.
Thank you very much, Dr. Elijah. Mwebale nnyo mwenna.
The last question was that if I take my vaccination and I want to travel, am I going to test positive or something? Sorry about.
Yeah. So it's if you have not been within the 10 days of the incubation period for the virus, remembering that the vaccine takes effect 2 weeks later, you won't test positive. So after the 10 days, you should be fine, really, and you should be protected.
Thank you very much.
We would have wished to go on and on and on until we exhaust all the questions, but time is not our best ally. We have run out of time. We wish to thank the Dr. Elijah. He was on duty tonight, but he squeezed time to come and attend this session and educate us. I will just conclude with just one comment from Saison Namaganda Musitra in Uganda. She's grateful for the session and concludes by saying, in Uganda, many of us don't know when and if we will get COVID-19 vaccines. So I encourage those in Europe, Sweden, and UK to grab this opportunity of getting COVID-19 with both hands. Like the way, this is my addition, we should grab it the way the hungry hyena grabs meat. Empisa engage jerunkanna mu ennyama yengege tunokola ki okujjumira ate dokita atusabye n'agamba nti si bya bufuzi naye ku ky'obulwadde tulina okwebeereramu nga bannayuganda ng'abaddugavu. So Dr. tweyanziza nnyo, especially for sparing time. I know it was not easy for you. You struggled and you only confirmed at the very last moment at the cost of your shift and say that you have to get a cover and that kind. So I don't want to ask to hold you any longer than this. So abayina follow-up questions, you can always forward them to us and then we can get them to the doctor. Mwebale nnyo okubeera naffe mwenna era twagala okubasiibula akawungeezi ka leero. Mukama abawe nnyo omukisa.
Thank you for having me. Mubeere bulungi. I will beg to be excused.
Okay, bye.
Yeah.